If you can just tell me if my slides are working and if I'm audible and visible. Are my slides visible?
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. My slides visible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Psychotherapy case-based discussion is visible.
Okay, so a very good morning to one and all. Welcome back again on a Sunday morning. So the topic that has been allotted to me is psychotherapy. So I already had the last class where I discussed the overview of all the different forms of therapy that are there. So what I thought I'll do in the next 1.5 hours to 2 hours is that I thought to actually give you a hands-on demonstration of some case-based vishnets, so that actually if you can relate to a few clients in future, or if you have already been seeing patients in counseling sessions, so maybe you can actually implement a few of these techniques in those sessions as well. So that is why I thought I'll be doing it a bit hands-on and a bit case-based. I would appreciate if there will be some response, at least in the chat or in the discussion, because that will help me understand where you stand and how actually I can give more inputs, because there is a lot to cover, and definitely covering all the therapy measures in one class is not possible. So I'll try to talk about the basics, but if at any point of time you need to go into a bit more depth, and if time permits, I'll be happy to do that. But I think you have to ask me questions in those lines, because I thought a basic will be more useful for most of you. So, before I start the presentation, I'll just talk about how psychotherapy started, and what are the different waves of psychotherapy, and which particular form of psychotherapy you should be choosing to a particular client, right? So, I talked about the psychodynamic or the analytic psychotherapy, which was the first forms of therapy that ever came, and it primarily focuses on what is unconscious, that is something in the past or something in the early experiences, and we believe that because of the ego defense mechanism we do not have insight about it, and that is where the role of psychodynamic therapy even today exists. It takes a long time, it requires a lot of expertise and commitment from the therapist, and commitment from the client. So it is like a very deep, I would say it's a very deeper form of therapy, but it's still, the validity exists, because for some patients, like I'll talk about it in the final thing, other forms of therapy might not be beneficial, so maybe there we have to resort to psychodynamic therapy, right? The second wave is like, because there was a lot of limitations in the first, so people started coming up with behavior therapy. So today, the role of behavior therapy is particularly focused in dealing with children with intellectual disability or children in the neurodevelopmental disorder, where they might not have a lot of thinking ability or the cognitive ability, but it's very much here and there. Like for example, we use it for children even today. Like all the classroom teachings and what even today the class that we are having is based on a behavioral therapy principle. I'll tell you how. Uh, the school example will be better. You know, like you have exams, then after exams you give grades and marks, and based on that, whoever secures a higher mark is awarded a prize. You know, in front of everyone, is appreciated. So there is a reward there, right? And then to achieve that reward, or in anticipation of the reward, people continue to do a desirable behavior. Like for example, they continue to study more, they want to perform better, and because at the end you have something called a reward. So similarly, people use it in occupational settings as well. For example, if you work hard or you do a better work, then you are given bonuses and all. So that is also a form of behavior therapy. How to use which form of reward is something which is a bit challenging. Maybe I'll not discuss about the entire depth of it, but I'll give you some examples that you can use it in your day-to-day practice. The third wave is because it was very, very behavioral. You know, there was a lot of criticism that came up saying that, you know, like everything is not just behavior. You know, we are human beings. Our behavior is related to our thoughts, our emotions. So there's lot of other things also that are there. We just cannot ignore everything and start talking to us like a child always, you know, like a behavioral principle always. So behavioral principles are very, very prominent, and possibly the only way that you can intervene in children less than 8 years if you want to have a behavioral change in particular, not necessarily emotional. For emotional disorders, we have something called play therapy. I just shared it very briefly last time. And this session also will not be focusing on play therapy because it's a very highly specialized form of therapy and it requires extensive training before you're actually able to do it. But just knowing that there is a form of therapy called play therapy might be helpful because you might be able to refer clients to people who have expertise in that. Okay. So what happened is because there was a lot of criticism with behavioral therapy, there came the cognitive wave, a cognitive wave where people started talking about the thoughts and what belief system they have, and how, if at all there is a faulty belief system, how we can correct it. I'll be giving you three examples actually regarding CPT because I think that is something all of us need to know because the most common disorder that presents to us in the clinics is depression and anxiety, and CPT is something which can be very very beneficial for people who have depression and anxiety. So I'll be talking about CBT in a bit more detail and I'll give you three examples, right? And the last is the mindfulness based wave or mindfulness based therapies, where people started talking about, because all the previous therapies were very much pinpointed on saying there is a fault in you, like there is a problem in you, this thought is wrong, that behavior is wrong, this is desirable, that is not desirable. So there was a lot of, I would say, fault finding. Okay. And then people started saying, like no one is perfect. So there is a fault in everyone, right? So how much correction can we do and to what extent it is possible? For people who do not have a diagnosable mental health condition, like for example, there is no active severe depression or severe anxiety. So in those situations, it may not be possible. It is not always right to say because some thought problem or the other, all of us will have, right? So we cannot keep on doing CPT to each and every step and saying that there is a problem in me, there is a problem in me. So that kind of mentality people wanted to change, and they started saying, like suppose there is a thing that is, it's a sad moment that happened. So suppose I failed in the class, so I'm bound to be sad, right? So having that sadness is not always pathological, right? So I need to be able to regulate my emotions better. So that emotion regulation is more important than just saying me there is a faulty thought always. There may not be a faulty thought, but my sadness may be there because of something that is real. And there is no cognitive problem, but still I feel sad, which is like a lot. So in those situations, people started coming up with this the latest form of therapy, which is called the mindfulness-based wave, or the mindfulness-based therapies, and there are many forms here. I would rather say this is like most happening forms of therapy today because there's a lot of research coming up into mindfulness-based interventions, and they're trying mindfulness-based approaches for almost all sorts of disorders across the spectrum. For example, in our institute right now, we have nursing, we have postgraduate theses and all, and some of them are dedicated to mindfulness-based interventions. In like one of them is in a breast cancer, which recently got published. Then another is in the ICU settings where there is a lot of distress and we're planning something for the caregivers. So there's a lot of research there and people are trying to make the sessions as brief as possible. Like for example, we want to challenge to see if a 30-minute session would be better or will that work even in 10 minutes. So those kind of interventions are also being tried, seeing what is the minimum duration of efficacy. The origin of mindfulness-based therapies dates back to yoga and principles of meditation that were there, very strongly grounded in the yogic mindset. It states from there because the mindfulness part of the entire thing of yoga has shown efficacy in a lot of disorders, and we have been able to replicate it with utmost precision as well. I think that is where I'll talk about. And mindfulness-based therapies because they're very, very relevant, and we happen to see a lot of clients who have a lot of emotion dysregulation, and they have a lot of anger issues, like not being able to be in the moment, always staying in the past, holding on to past mistakes and all that. So the need to come back to present. So I'll be also talking about certain skills that are needed. So mindfulness-based therapies is more about developing skills. It is not saying that there is a fault in you, but it says that if there is a problem, you can deal with it better. For example, I want to travel between, for example, Kit to Jaidev Vihar. So what I can do is I can take a bus every day, right? I can take an auto every day. So to need an auto, I need to maybe go to the auto stand every day and take a auto from there, or I can install the app in my phone, right, and call the Ola, Uber, Rapido, whatever to my doorstep, and I can do that. For that, I need a skill of using the internet, using a smartphone, ability to download the app, and the ability to use it, right. So there's so many skills there which can actually improve your comfort level rather than going to the bus stand and taking a bus. And the next level of skill could be, you own your own vehicle, could be a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler, and you learn the skill of driving and then you transit accordingly. There is no right and wrong there. But what skill you want to learn and you're willing to learn is something which will make the change. And mindfulness-based therapy is the therapy that I'm talking about is DBT, which is a very extensive and exhaustive form of therapy, initially devised for the borderline personality disorder per se, but it has also found its evidence across a lot of spectrum disorders, particularly for people who have emotion regulation among adolescent population, because the brain is not yet wired to be very regulated. So in those situations, we can use that form of therapy. So I'll be talking about that example a bit more, like the DBT. I'll be giving you some examples. Uh, and more intense skills also I'll talk to you about it. So that is how I think the next 1 to 2 hours. So I have to finish by 11:20. So it's like exactly 1.5 hours from now. Yes. Okay. So in between, if you want to ask some questions or you want me to go into a bit more depth, maybe you can just unmute and ask me to do that. I'll clarify it then. Right. So psychodynamic therapy, I just talk to you about. I did talk to you about what is the principle behind it, the theoretical principle of the ego, superego, and the ego defense mechanisms. So I'll just talk about one example where this can happen, and the techniques that I talked about very briefly last time, but I'll talk to you in a bit more detail this time. So here, the core belief is the unconscious shapes my behavior. Like for example, even you can talk about the way I'm moving my hand, right? This particular way that I'm moving my hand, I don't know where it came from, right? Or maybe some people do it like this, some mannerism, some behavior, or the way you react to a particular moment. For example, you walk into a class and you do not know why every time you walk into a class or every time you see this particular teacher, you feel something familiar, and you do not know why. You have never interacted with a teacher, you never know why you're feeling familiar with this teacher, right? So, and that is something you're not very sure if it is okay, and if you're able to manage, fine. But some people, it actually causes a lot of distress, that they go back to the um, I'm not misquoting any profession per se, but yeah, they go back to holy faith healers, go back to astrologers, like start saying, I don't know, the day this teacher came, my grades have started dropping. Is it doing some black magic to me and stuff like that? So rather than doing those stuff, if you actually want to get an answer to those questions that are bothering, you can actually opt for a psychodynamic or psychoanalytic form of psychotherapy. So I'll tell you what happens here. It's like perhaps that particular phase that you see and you feel familiar. It could be because of one more thing. It could be because possibly in a very early childhood, could be your grandfather or someone, and you just saw them maybe only till a year and then you lost them perhaps. And then that phase perhaps has some similarity, but you do not remember it very well because you were very young then. And maybe you have seen some photos of black and white, but you're not very able to say if it is the same person or something like that. And some facial similarities might be there. And you had a lot of attachment back then when you were 1 year old, but right now you do not remember a lot. So there are a lot of unconscious things that are there inside, and possibly when you see this particular person, you might be identifying that person as your grandfather, and that is why that kind of a familiarity might be there. So there could be a lot of reasons. I'm not saying this is the only reason, but there could be a lot of similar reasons that could be there. And the example that I'm giving you is a very, very, I would say, a normal, very common experience. It's not very, very uncommon. It's not pathological per se. So I don't think the client that comes to you for therapy will have similar kind of a distress. They might have something which is even more deep. For example, where it actually is helpful is, for example, there's a person who has come and she's a 20-year-old female per se, and she always had a very strained relationship with her parents, right? But however, she thought because she'll go to the hostel someday and she'll start feeling better. But once in the hostel, all of her friends had boyfriends and stuff, and she started making a boyfriend relationship, and she started feeling that like initially she was a lot giving into the relationship, but later she started seeing that that the relationship is very boring. I don't like being there. There's nothing happening. And I talked to you about the last time about the attachment kind of relationships that happen with the object relations theory. Because you're used to a very strained form of relationship, like from birth till like almost till an adult. And right now, when the relationship is healthy and it's like there's nothing happening strained, you feel bored, right? So once they come to you, initially they start like talking up to you a lot and all that. But once you start saying, like the session is for 45 minutes and I'm sorry, miss, but I have to cut down the session. And then they don't show up for the next 2 sessions, something like that. So what happens here is the first step is free association when you allow the client to talk without censors. So usually what we do is this kind of a sitting where you sit in front of each other, you actually look into the eyes of the therapist, or you're actually seeing the therapist. It causes a lot of barriers in your ability to actually express. So the usual technique, and all of us are very aware about the Freud chair. Like there's a couch kind of a thing, and you are allowed to lie down, and you look at the ceiling in a dim light kind of a situation, and you're allowed to talk without any censors. That is free association. And while you do that, while the client does that, the therapist notes down everything, right? Which they actually sit down later to find an association. Like this is something which happened in the early childhood, this is now, and then there could be an association. There's a hypothesis that we form, right? And then one day the client starts acting out the way the client acts out in his or her relationships, and that is where the transference happens. And transference is the kind of feelings the client projects towards the therapist is called transference. And if the therapist also has a counter feeling in response to that feeling towards the client, it is called counter transference, right? So it's very, very important when you're doing a psychodynamic therapy. Transference and counter transference are bound to happen. So what you're supposed to do is you should be having the ability to identify it, give it back to the awareness to the client, interpret it, and then make it a therapeutic move. Like you can say, see, this is the way you reacted, and possibly it was because I had set a healthy limit. Perhaps you're not used to having limits, and you want your demands to be fulfilled forever. Is that something which is there true for you? Like just reflective and ask the client to throw more answers to it, and that is how you can provide insight. Never be very, very confrontational, saying, this is it, this is what it is. I don't think it works like that, because it works on hypotheses and assumptions. And you have to cross check with the client about whatever hypothesis you have, and if the client actually feels it is true for them. So sometimes when you say it like that, the client may initially say yes, yes, possible, possible, but then later the symptom does not disappear, the primary problem still stays. So possibly there is something else to it, and maybe you still need to continue analysis, right? Okay. And the last thing, which is very, very interesting, and it's a bit debatable as well, is about the dreams, because it is in the psychoanalytic field, it is strongly held that dreams are the gateway to unconscious, right? And there are very, I would say, very elaborate techniques on interpreting dreams, and how each and every thing that you see in the dream is not necessarily true directly, but what can actually happen is they have a lot of uh, modifications that our unconscious makes for us to, for it to be palatable, right? For example, Freud said, that the world revolves around two things. One is eros and thanatos. Eros is like life, which is sexuality, and thanatos is like death, which is possibly anger and frustration and all of that. So if your sexuality is satisfied, you're happy. If not, it comes out as frustration, anger. That is what he said. And perhaps this inner stems of depth of psyche have some relationship to this. May not be completely true, may not be that everything is that itself. But when a dream comes, and it talks also about a lot of forbidden sexual impulses and all of that, and Freud is everything about this forbidden sexual impulses. So it says those kind of impulses, even it is not palatable to our ego or psyche. That is why there has to be a lot of modifications, and it comes as different ways and not necessarily a suppressed sexual impulse, right? So I'll not go into the details of it, because I think it's going to take a long. But yes, so this particular case is something which you can think of therapy. It's like Rashmi, who is a 32-year-old female, presents with chronic relationship difficulties. She reports feeling anxious when partners become distant, so leading to a clingy behavior. Right? And the history reveals an emotionally unavailable mother who would withdraw affection unpredictably during childhood. Possibly the mother had maternal depression, postpartum onset, and she was never treated. So when we say this kind of a scenario, obviously when the patient comes, they will not talk about the emotionally distant mother. It is something you have to elicit, right? But after a lot of free association and establishing rapport, you actually get back to the childhood when this has happened. So what is your interpretation, and what is your formulation based on which you're going to work? So in this, possibly there was an anxious attachment style. I talked about it, attachment styles last time by John Bowlby, right? So because there was an unavailable mother, right, she would suddenly disappear, not be available. So this particular child is always very anxious, and I do not know what to do. What if my mother goes away? What if my mother goes away? So she's always anxious, right? So when you have that kind of an attachment style, which is from the early maternal withdrawal, unpredictable withdrawal, so there can be an unconscious fear that perhaps every person on earth will leave me, and there can be a sense or a fear of abandonment. So possibly this could be the formulation based on which we can work with Rashmi. So what are the steps? The first is we can establish a therapeutic alliance, create a safe and consistent relationship. What we mean by a safe and a consistent relationship is very, very important because that is very, very crucial, not only to a psychodynamic therapy, but for any form of therapy. It is like consistency, it's like you provide like every Tuesday 4 to 5 we have a session, or every alternate Tuesday 4 to 5 we have a session, or some time, some periodicity to it, which is predictable. It's very, very important to develop a therapeutic relationship. Okay? Second, when we talk about a safe relationship, safe means the client should feel safe. Safe in terms of the space, make it well lit, in a very open space, have other people there outside. Because psychotherapy happens very private and intimate things people share. It's always important to make the client feel safe, not just physically, but also emotionally and socially. Right? If they want a particular person to accompany them to therapy, you can ask them to come. You can briefly interact with them and then ask them to sit outside while you interact with the client. Right. So it's important to develop that kind of an environment. Should be, like as long as you remember about your childhood, what comes to your mind? It has to be very open-ended kind of a question, and then see if there is any particular pattern to the close relationships. For example, the mother, the father, the siblings, any early friend that she had, or any other attachment figures, the grandparents or maternal uncle, paternal aunts, so those kind of relationships. Explore the relationship to each of the significant adults, and then analyze transference. So, like, what kind of relationship the client has with you? Like, is she very pleasant? Is she a bit upset? Is she moody? And what does she do when she is moody? What does she do when she is, like she is happy, she is sad? Does she bring you gifts every time she comes? Does she want to stand out to be special? Like I had a client who every time she comes to me, she brings some gift or the other, and every time the gift that she brings is a bit different. Initially she started getting cards, right? Greeting cards and all. So accepting greeting cards is not unethical, but then you have to let them know this is something which I consider as the property of my hospital, because I we are all working as a team, so it's for my department. So I'd like to keep it somewhere which is very, very open. If you say that yes, this greeting makes me feel very special, like thank you so much, I consider it as a special kind of a thing. So that kind of feelings are getting induced in you. Possibly the client is working similarly in the other relationships in her life, and she wants that special status, perhaps because of her inner deprivation. So you have to analyze that as well. Like how do they turn up each and every session? Do they turn up on time? Are they regularly late? Do they come very early? Do they keep calling you repeatedly? Like आज मैं आऊँ, आज मैं आऊँ, आज मैं आऊँ. So what is there the way they relate to you? That will give us a hint towards how the relationships are. And then once you are aware about what is happening, you give the insight to the patient, understand the unconscious patterns, and work through it. Just do not tell them this is what it is and that is how it's going to happen. That is not going to happen. Once you have that insight and the person is aware this is where it's stemming from, ask them how they would like to change it. Like their perspective is very, very important, and actually help them work through whatever difficult relationships they have or whatever emotional issues they are dealing with right now. Work through them till they are satisfied with the way they're functioning is changing. And once the insight comes, thereafter also it takes around 1 to 3 months for any significant change to happen because it's time taking. Right? Okay, so that is one example that you can do. The next, I'll go to the behavior therapy. I told you the example that how it happens in schools and maybe some institutions use it. But I'll just give you one example. I've not written it down, but I think I'll give you this example. How we can use a behavior therapy principle for a child. And maybe what I use it very often, so maybe one of you can do it. So what we do is a lot of children come with conflicts with their parents. Actually, parents bring them. कि छुआ कथा सुनुनी, right? They mo kichi kotha sununi, sobbode phone dhoriki boshchi, the entire time he or she is on the phone, they never talk to us, they never listen to us. Even if we ask them to do anything, they'll not do it, they just refuse it. I don't know what to do with it. It's like too much. And that is when the parents get the kids here. And when you talk to a child, like the child seems to be a very happy child, very pleasant, doing a lot of things, talking to you about everything. The child seems to be intelligent, does not seem to have ADHD or other, like significant ODD or conduct disorder kind of issues. So there's no diagnosable mental health condition, and it seems like it's just a behavior problem that has come, right? So once you're there, so the only thing that can help him is actually a behavior therapy because you don't see anything else. There's no depression, there's no mood disorder, there is no ADHD or developmental condition which is affecting this behavior. It's more of a behavioral issue, which is possibly because of the way the child is be used to the environment or the environment is behaving with the child. Okay. So I'll give you what happens. This particular child actually has both parents and both parents are working. So they wake up in the morning, they send the child to the tuition, and then the child comes, takes a bath, has breakfast, goes to school. Child comes back by 4:30. Child goes out to play, and the child comes back from play around, like, for example, 6. And then the child goes to tuition, and by 7 o'clock, tuition is over. And then both these husband and wife who are IT professionals come back to work at 7. Okay. And then when the child is at home and they return back, the child starts using the phone. And that is the time when both the parents actually get freshened up, like they have coffee, tea, and maybe chit chat a bit. That all people have some unfinished work to do that, and they get to dining table around 9 p.m. And from 7 to 9, the child is on the phone. This is where the entire complaint comes from. That every time the child is actually using the phone and is doing nothing, we ask him to get this, to do that. We ask him to study. He does not do it. He's not studying at home at all, and blah 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 blah. And then when you ask the child for dinner, also the child sits with the phone. The parents also keep taking phones in between whenever the call comes and stuff like that. And then the child continues to use the phone till bedtime, where the parents also take the laptop to the bed, like, and they want the child to sleep. And they come and check the child around 11 o'clock, and the child is still using the phone. Right? So what did happen and what went wrong here? Right? Anyone would like to answer? Maybe you can type in the chat box, or you can maybe unmute and sing. Anything is fine. Will anyone want to answer? Is it no? Okay. If no one is willing to answer, I'll tell you what are the problems here. So what happened here is this is a child who has a very clear, like a very clear structure the entire day, has a lot of things to do the entire day. And when the child comes back home at 7, that is only the time when the parents came back home. And the child has had a very difficult, or I would say an extensively academically rich entire day. And now there is no particular structure that what is the child expected to do. The parents are busy on their own. There is no modeling. There is no clear direction, no clear instruction about what is expected of the child. And that is when the child resorts to using the phone. Because when I ask the child, this is what your parents say, what do you do? I have been studying the entire day. What else do you expect from me? I just want to relax a bit. Anyways, they are also on the phone. Like either on the phone or on the laptop. What else do I do? They don't talk to me. If I go to them to talk to them, like they say, "Okay, I'll talk to you later. I'm tired," and stuff like that. What else do you expect me to do? How else do I keep myself busy? And what I do on the phone is actually I like listening to songs. So I watch a few videos. That's it. I watch a few videos and sometimes I listen to some songs. And then the child actually keeps doodling. Be aware what is doodling. That is the only thing what I do with the phone. And then when you say this to the parent says, no, no, you don't know. The child keeps manipulating all the time. He's a very bad child. And then you talk to the teachers. Like the teacher says, a very well-behaved child. The tuition teacher, the school teacher, everyone says it's a very good child. And the problem behavior is happening only at home. So this very clearly gives an indication that possibly the home structuring of the environment is something that the child will benefit from because that is how the child has been dealing with the entire day, right? So what I mean by structure and what is expected as a structure is it's important to have a very clear routine and an agreement between the parent and the child. This is how we expect the day to be. What do you think? a reflection on the child saying that, like screen time is okay, but maybe maximum limit of whatever limit you feel is feasible for that environment. Fix that. Okay, 45 minutes to 1 hour. And if screen time is the thing that the child is actually enjoying, use screen time as a reward and definitely not after 9 p.m. So have some family rules where no one uses the phone after 9 p.m. That is something called a modeling, where you actually show the child, yes, it is a rule for everyone and you don't get to use it. No one uses it as well. We don't use it as well. There are certain space which are digitally free and all of you do that. And if you do it, if you comply to it, you will get a screen time of extra 15 minutes. Like reward that behavior with screen time. And you can also say, for example, after you come back from work, why not finish having snacks, then do your homework, and then maybe after you finish your homework, you can have your screen for half an hour, and then maybe um, help with some household chores if you want them to, or maybe um, finish doing a project for the next day morning, and then you can have another 15 minutes of homework, something like that. So some behavior contract where you reward a desirable behavior with something that they actually love doing. And that way, your screen time, which is like almost now freely available, they feel entitled to use the screen because that is how they feel everyone else is doing. Maybe you can actually set limits around your own screen time around the child. At the same time, model healthy behaviors where you have digital free time. So if the child abides to this, he gets screen time in return, right? So that is how you provide a very clear structure, reward, and the behavior will start changing. Okay? So this is what we call as a conditioning, where you actually start doing it yourself. You tell them this is what we are going to do from now on, and then reinforce the behavior with screen time. And exposure techniques is something which is used in different forms of therapy, but this is a very clear example of BT. Right? Okay, so that's about BT example. I'll go to the third one. I have three examples here, so it will take me some more time. So third wave of therapy is cognitive behavior therapy, and it says whatever happens between a stimulus and a response. Because they are children, we do not give a lot of emphasis to the thought, but they say, ki, suppose there is a response, like for example, and there is a stimulus. For example, I have to go to college every day in the morning, right? Or I have to go to work every day in the morning. And I'm very happy on Saturdays and Sundays, but once it comes to Monday, that day morning, I start experiencing a lot of anxiety, stomach pain, headache, and I start having a lot of somatic symptoms, right? So what I do, I tend to take a leave. And so there is a stimulus that is Monday, which is maybe I have to go to work or college or school, whatever. And what is the responses? I do not go to school. I take a leave off. Why? Because I have some somatic symptoms. Okay. So what cognitive behavior therapy says is it's not just simply possible that Monday will not trigger these emotions just like that. There must be some underlying thought process that is happening, and because of which there is a mediation between us. So it says there is a situation and event, and there are emotions and behaviors, and in the background there are thoughts. So the most important thing about CBT is the thought part of it, and it believes that thoughts influence emotion and behavior, and cognitive distortions maintain the problem. So there are definitely some distortions in the cognitive level which actually maintain the problem. What we need to do is we set a very clear structure, maximum 10 to 12 sessions, where you actually analyze this particular course cognitive distortion and then help them modify to regulate the distress. Yeah. So this is one example. You can see, for example, there is a there's this 35-year-old male who has a child. So what happens is he returns back from work, and then when he's at home, the wife goes out for some other work or something, and then there's a baby at home, and the baby does not just stop crying. The baby, the father says, "This particular day, I only have to take care of it because the mom has some work," and the baby does not stop crying. The immediate thought that comes to the dad is, "I'm a useless dad. There's no point. I will not be able to stop the baby crying," and that throws both in his mind. So what does he do? Instead, he avoids the baby. He stays in work longer. He says that no, I'll not go home because if I go home, then the baby will not stop crying. So possibly then he starts avoiding the baby, stays longer at work. And at the same time, what is the emotion that goes inside him is sadness. And physically, what happens is he starts feeling deflated. He feels low motivation. He has disturbed sleep, and then this cycle is perpetuating. Once you have a low mood and low disturbed sleep, you start feeling low, and Once you're feeling low, again, once every time you see the child crying, you start feeling like I'm a useless person. I won't be able to help. And this cycle continues to happen, and you stay in that cycle forever. So what we need to do is we need to sit and tell the person here, you see, this thought, just because the baby is not stopping crying, there could be alternate reasons why the child is doing it. Just because the mother left, it could be a reason that the child is having a separation anxiety, which is very, very normal for children, or maybe at least infants. It's very, very normal if the mother moves away. They keep demanding for the mama, mama. That is what is a very common phenomenon. It is not for you that the child is crying, it's because the child is separated from the mother. The child is experiencing distress, and at this stage, children are supposed to be symbiotically almost fused with the mother, emotionally, physically, entirely. So that is the first point. Okay? Once you start saying this particular thought is actually perpetuating it, so once we need to understand this thought is something which is not true. It is a cognitive distortion that makes you feel like that. And then what do you do? Then we start saying what you can do is changing your thought is difficult because that is almost automatic, right? It's called NAT, it's called the negative automatic thoughts. So actually the behavior that you do is avoiding the baby and staying longer at work. Can you just not do it? Can you do it the reverse? Just stay with the baby for longer time, maybe the child will develop attachment to you. Can you do that? And the client actually goes back home and tries staying at home with the baby a little longer. And the baby stopped crying maybe after 15-20 minutes. And the baby started playing with the father as well, right? So once the child started interacting with the father, started playing with the father started feeling involved and connected and engaged. And he started returning from work every day, and slowly, slowly, the crying duration of the baby reduced. Initially, it was 15 to 20 minutes, and now it was 15 minutes, and it was like 10 minutes. And then, when the child saw the father, the child was actually excited rather than actually crying. So, the child was happy when she went to the father from the mother. So, slowly, this particular behavior started changing, and once this behavior changed, he started feeling motivated, he started sleeping well, did not feel sad anymore. So even if those thoughts kept coming sometimes, he challenged it. He did the behavior which was contradictory to what he was doing right now in response to the thought. And once you modify the behavior which is there in your control, your actually thought process and the entire cycle breaks, and that is how you can come out of the loop. So this is how CBT works. I'll give you one more example, and this is not one example. This is the usual assumptions that people have. So there's some relevant childhood data which is usually there, like some have a lot of criticizing childhood. For example, there was a 20-year-old female who came and every time she would sit in a particular way, every time she would do a particular task, like always she was being compared with others in the family, like your father was better, your sister is better, you're not doing it enough, not doing it good enough. This is not how you sit, this is not how you stand, this is not how you walk, this is not what you're supposed to wear. So criticism in each and everything that she does, like so invalidating her own self. Emphasis on standards of attainment and self-reliance, like this is what you're supposed to achieve, like your emotions don't matter, right? And then there might be a lot of abuse within the family, emotional, physical. All of us have grown up in middle class families. Most of us have grown up in middle class families. Uh, so we know that abuse is very, very real, right? We tend to get abused physically, emotionally, like a lot of physical punishment, and sometimes even like not only your family, people outside who come also pour a lot of like why is he doing this? Like you're not supposed to do that. You look like this. Like you're disgusting to your parents and stuff like that. Not only from within the family, it also comes from people around. Or, so-called social circle, like they're also allowed and open to criticize your child. That is how we grew up. So the core belief the child has is, look, I'm weak, I'm useless. Like everyone is critical, they're rejecting, the world is an unsafe space, I don't know who to be comfortable to talk to. And then perhaps I don't deserve love, I don't know. My feelings are unacceptable, and if I started crying, I have got actually more punishment. So, like my feelings are not acceptable, I should stop it, they're dangerous, right? And what happens is if I depend on myself, I won't be able to cope. So I need someone to always, like continue taking care of me. They become dependent on others, right? And then they also have this: if I depend on others, I'll be taken advantage of. I won't be able to cope because they will reject me. The world is not safe. I cannot function alone. I cannot meet the other standards. I don't deserve them. If I express emotions, that means I'm weak. If I feel strong emotions, I must do something to get rid of it. So compensatory, what to do? Either they depend excessively on others or there's complete mistrust and isolation. They do not connect at all. There could be an anticipation of an efforts to avoid rejection. Like some people, I said an example with excessively clingy and stuff like that, and they can go to any extent. So some people who tend to stay in so-called toxic relationships possibly have this kind of a background that goes on, right? So they attempt to control and avoid emotions. So here, what we need to do is the core belief that is there, like I'm weak and useless. So once you feel like that, what do? Like I just go back to my room and I feel there's no point doing anything, so I just scroll the internet. Right? So because of this thought, what you're doing is actually going back, resorting, and you're not investing time in a productive way. So what you can do is when you have this negative automatic thought that I'm weak and useless, like why not do something productive? The next 1 hour, what I'll do is I'll maybe complete my homework or I'll complete this project assignment or maybe I'll start learning something new and gain my skill. Because I think I'm useless, I'll challenge that and do something exactly opposite. And once you start doing that, you start feeling useful. You start people start appreciating. Oh, this is something I did not know. Where did you learn it from? And people start showing interest in you, and maybe the behavior of people around will also change, and that is how you will also start feeling not weak and useless anymore. So you have to identify your core belief in this entire because we have been talking about history, childhood data, and all of that. So how to conceptualize and what to work on is identifying that core negative automatic thought. Because I've put it on pen and paper on the slide, it's very seems very easy, but trust me, that is the most difficult job to identify what is the core dysfunction. Okay, this is one more example I said I'll give you. So this is Mr. Avinash, who is a 28-year-old male, who presented with social anxiety and depression. He avoids social gatherings, believing everyone will judge me. I'll say something stupid and embarrass myself. And reports feeling anxious at work presentations and has declined two promotion opportunities because of the fear of increased visibility. Right? So when we start talking to this patient, and maybe from this much also, everyone will judge me. So what does that mean? It's possibly doing something like mind reading. Without even knowing what's going on in another's mind, he started mind reading, everyone will judge me. And then he also says he catastrophizing, thinking about the worst possible outcome. I'll embarrass myself. He's not even gone to the meeting, he's not even interacted with anyone. He starts feeling that perhaps if I go, then the worst thing is going to happen is I'm going to embarrass myself. Right? And then there is a all in non thinking, like either everything goes well or I'm good for nothing. So if I get a promotion and I go there, I get a lot of visibility. Then I'll have a lot of work demand. I will not be able to function that much. That is why it's better that I stay here. Right? And then there is a fortune telling about social outcomes. I know what is going to happen because this is how it always happens. Right? So these are the cognitive distortions that are there, and the behavior patterns. What is happening is because he fears if you will judge me, he starts avoiding social situations because he starts feeling that I'll embarrass myself. He has a safety behavior. He might be rehearsing conversations repeatedly. And then all and on thinking about performance, he's actually doing a career sabotage by not taking promotions. And then once the social interactions happen, what he keeps doing is, did I do a mistake? Did I do a mistake? And he keeps rethinking about it. The rumination about social interactions, right? So if you put it in that table, it's like there's a cognitive distortion and then their behavior patterns. That is how the person keeps feeling sad, anxiety, depression, all of that continues. So, how do you plan on working on it? The first is we explain them the CBT models. SMART goals are something the SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, reliable, and time based. Like, for example, if you want to attend, what is the exact thing? Is I actually want to attend social events and I want to accept the promotion, right? So that is a goal. So when you talk about social events, it's very, very non-specific, right? So what you have to do is make it specific. Like next week I have a birthday coming up, or next week I have this wedding coming up. So I will be attending the wedding in the next week. Stay there for 30 minutes, interact with people, have dinner, and come back. Okay? So what we did was very specific. We said social events, matlab which social event. It was measurable because I will stay there for 30 minutes or 1 hour or something. It is achievable because staying there for 30 minutes is something which is achievable. We cannot say you have to stay there from the beginning of the barat to the end of the marriage. Like it is not achievable for someone who is having this much amount of anxiety, is not attended a social event in the last 10 years, right? And then that has to be reliable. Reliable as in, if I say half an hour, he also should understand it's half an hour. For example, if I say ki, you have to go there and come. So if he goes there and he sits in the vehicle and then he comes back, so like what I mean by going there and coming may not be what he means by going there and coming. So you have to say you have to interact with people inside the venue, okay? And it's time based. Time based means within the next 1 week, you have to give a goal which is very which fulfills the SMART goals, right? Then you monitor your thought, like what happened, like you allow the ask the child to do it, the client to do it, and then when they come back, when you are in that moment, what are the thoughts that came to your mind? Come back and record it because we have to talk about it, analyze it, and then maybe we can help you improve it better. Then we challenge the cognitive thoughts after giving this one possible example. You thought you will be embarrassed, and things like that happened. What happened? What made you feel like that? Okay. That is called Socratic questioning, where we actually, it's a down arrow approach. And the question that we asked is, okay, so what happened? Why did you feel that way? How did it happen? Oh, tell me more about it. So without any, I would say, leading questions, you try to get to the root of it. And then the behavior experiment is like that goal that I said about. Make it as an experiment and see what happens. And gradually increase the difficulty of it. Like suppose this is the first time you do it. The next time what you do is tell it for 1 hour. The next time that you do it, which actually a close person and all, you actually ask them to visit maybe a day before and then the next day marriage so that he can get more involved if that person matters more. And then those behavioral experiments will actually challenge his own thought. That is how his behavior will improve. And then skills training is when you teach about social skills, assertiveness, and role plays. I'll tell you what it is. This is particularly relevant for people who are the two extremes of it. Like some people who are like extremely socially awkward, they tend to withdraw, not even looking to talk. Whenever a person approaches them, take the drink and move away. So we have seen a lot of people like that. So there we need to talk about social skills, where we need to tell them how to initiate eye contact with a stranger, like what to say, maybe the opening line, what can it be, how to strike a conversation, how to continue making a conversation, and then when to stop and when to understand the person is not interested and take a step back. Right? These are all social skills. Sometimes it can be extreme. Like people who are on the spectrum, who have autistic features or who have autistic spectrum disorder, or people who are like extrovert, they continue talking without understanding what's if the other person is interested or not. So also knowing when to stop and when to pause are very important skills, which are also social skills, right? The second is assertiveness. Assertiveness means also learning to say a no when you're not comfortable. And some people tend to be, like very people pleasing. They know, okay, I have a lot of work at home, and then there's this movie coming up, and everyone is going, and they actually have to finish it by the deadline. Deadline is tomorrow, and you plan to work only tonight, and then there's this movie coming up. You actually want to say a no because you have that work, but you're not able to say a no, thinking they will feel bad. So maybe being assertive is also setting boundaries and helping them communicate that without feeling apologetic or without fearing the consequences. Also something that is important. That is assertiveness that we need to do that. And then practice it through role plays because this particular person that we're talking about here, Avinash, right? So Mr. Avinash has not been to any social gatherings for last 10 years, suppose. So he might not be very good at the social skills and assertiveness. So he might need demonstration through role plays, and that is how we do a skills training. And then finally, for relapse prevention, we need to provide them some cards, help them identify, see, this is a situation where you might be triggered to have the same behavior. So be prepared for it and do not do it. So maybe providing them or anticipating what could be the triggers and where things might go wrong will also be a helpful way to go about it, right? Okay, that was about CBT. I'll talk about the last wave or DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. Before this, I'll just take a pause. I'll clarify some questions if there are any. Then I'll go for the next part. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm waiting for questions. I have been continuously talking for almost an hour now. I expect some questions, at least clarifications or some opinion suggestion. So is it no questions?
Madam, just I wanted to know, sometimes like this CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, some patients or some clients, they hide something and they don't want to express properly. But sometimes they are showing they are good, they are best like this. But how can we study? Means how can we know that that behavioral therapy? After that, we can guess and we can plan for that.
What I do in such situations, I'll tell you. If you feel that a client is hiding something and there is more to it, so what I do is I practice a very honest reflection. What I mean by honest reflection is, suppose I feel that they're not sharing the entire story, you can just say, I understand when you're talking about very difficult and intimate feelings to someone, be it a therapy setting as well. It can be difficult sometimes to be honest to our own self, and I have a hunch that possibly there might be something more to it. I'm not very sure if you're aware if it is relevant, and that is why I'm not mentioning. But I think there is more to the story. Not very sure if you are comfortable talking about it. But if talking about it is not comfortable, can you just write a diary about what you feel about it, and maybe we can talk about whatever you wrote there. So maybe some kind of a reflection about your um, gut feeling will actually help them open up if they're actually hiding something. And if they're not hiding something, if they do not want to talk about it, some clients also say, I understand, but I would rather not want to talk about it. Then you can just, there's something called roll with resistance. We have to just allow it to be, you have to say, okay, I respect that. At the same time, I just need to share a limitation that if you're not completely sharing the entire truth, the therapy efficacy of the therapy might not be also that great. We might be also limited in the efficacy that you're getting. So I'm not very sure if I can help you completely if you not give me the complete information. So these are different ways to help them open up. When after that, if things persist, um, then maybe you have to say them. I think there's something more to it, and I'm not able to get there. Would you like to tell me, or maybe then we can think of alternative forms of helping you, and not necessarily therapy? So, maybe like that. Or will you be
Okay,
okay?
ma'am.
Or will you
Yes.
be okay? Because you feel that you have some information from other sources. Is it okay if I talk to someone else because I think I need a bit more information about it? So that way also you can get some more information, and if the client is not open to talk about it, so this particular person was saying this, would you agree to it? That can be also another way.
And ma'am, actually, sometimes in a certain time or in a certain period, few children or few youths they change their behavior. Like today, my incident, because as you know, I am doing counseling sessions. I have one clinic. I'm practicing like little sessions, depression, anxiety, stress, all these things I'm practicing. So today, 8 a.m. in the morning, one client, husband, wife, they came for the counseling session for 1 hour. So she said me, why I'm telling this, because this is the behavioral changes. That's why I am telling them. Actually, she said me nowadays she is very angry and she can't control her anger. Then I said, why are you very behaving in your childhood like this? Then she said, no. After marriage, I'm behaving like this. I don't know. Sometimes in anger, what I'm doing, I can't understand. Then she said, I am taking medicine and I have consulted with one psychiatrist doctor. He has given the medicine and she is under medication. So I said, okay, you take the medicine and you be in the medication, and also you take the counseling sessions for peaceful mind. But one thing I couldn't understand, ma'am, in the period of childhood or adolescent time, she doesn't have such kind of anger. Also, although it was very less, but after marriage, she got severe anger. Sometimes she's breaking the mobiles and beating husband like this. So, can you suggest something so that accordingly we will get the knowledge from it?
Yes. So what you are talking about, if it is a recent onset behavior change, so in most of the cases there is an underlying axis one psychiatric diagnosis. Like the way you said, she's already on medication, so she could be having a mood disorder which is independently existing, and it does not necessarily have to do a lot with the psychological origins of it. It can be very, very biological as well. Like we have a lot of chemical neurotransmitters in the brain, dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. So an imbalance can also manifest with mood and emotional disorders. So from what you say, from the minimum information that I have, it seems like a possible underlying depression or a chronic depression state, which has been there, which might be exacerbated by the um, marital relationship, which maybe she's not very happy about, or maybe there might be conflicts around it. But when we talk about therapy in this context, where our role is to identify what are the goals of therapy. Like, because the client has come to you, what you can say is, or what you can ask is, I can understand there might be an underlying diagnosis because of which all of this is happening. But if you want to get better, what are the domains in which you think I can actually help you? So instead of telling them ki, that is the first step of whatever therapy that we do is called goal setting. So you might be seeing, thinking that possibly the anger management is the thing that they want help with, but the client might be saying, no, no, I feel that the husband needs to change, and like when he does that, that is when I get angry. It is not the problem with me; it is the problem with him. So unless and until we figure out what would be the goal of therapy is actually modifying your own behavior or modifying the environment, so that is when we have to set the first goal. Like for this particular client, you can talk to them about, okay, do you think the anger that you're getting is justified, or do you think it's a bit more? So what I do in such settings is I gain an insight, I help them gain an insight into their own anger management issues, and that is the first goal of therapy that we set, and we try to work on it. So once the client is, like, I understand it can be angry in situations, but definitely hitting your husband is not okay. That is what I personally feel. What do you have to say? Then she might come up with something, like, why do you say that? He keeps hitting me, and that is when I hit back, and something like that. So if that is also the part of the story, we have to address that as well, because abuse, any form of physical abuse in any form of relationship is not acceptable. So first, maybe setting clear boundaries about what is acceptable and what is not, and if then there is a difficulty in following it, you can adjust to that. So I think in this particular client, you have to set very clear goals, like achieving peace of mind is like an ultimate overall overarching framework, which is very, I would say, very um, a bit more broad. It's not very specific. The way I said, the goals has to be following the criteria of SMART. It has to be very specific. It has to be measurable. Like for example, anger outburst. Suppose I make it as a goal. Okay, I want to work on my anger management. So my goal would be, my target will be, whenever I get angry, I will take a step back, do deep breaths, drink water, and not shout, howl, or hit. Okay. So this is something which is very, very measurable. Measurable as in,
Sorry, ma'am. Number one is a deep breath, drink water, then
okay, so anger management techniques you want. So anger management
y-
techniques, what I usually do in my clinic is something called the mnemonic that we usually use called 4D technique. So what we do in 4D is, the first D is distance. Distance is like, for example, I'm talking to my husband, and when he says something, I'm getting angry. So that is my trigger. So what I will do is I'll distance myself from my trigger. So what I
yes.
do is we do it usually respectfully, and we say, "Ki, see, what you're saying right now is actually not going down well with me. I need some time to come back. Can I just calm down and come back?" Right. So you communicate respectfully that this is the distance that you want for some time, and you go to the other room and you do whatever you want to. So if it is in a relationship context, so you can actually do that, it's fine. But some people experience a lot of anger sitting in the class and stuff like that, and they cannot actually like tell or ask for permission. Then they can use an excuse like, I need to use the washroom, and then you can actually go to the washroom and you have your distance. And what you do there is, what you do when you go to the other room or when you have a distance is the second D, what we call as deep breathing. There are many techniques of deep breathing. The most common that we usually do is box breathing. Box breathing is 4 seconds of inhalation, 4 seconds of hold, 4 seconds of exhalation, and then again 4 seconds of hold. So it's like a box. So when we breathe in, we usually breathe in through our mouth. When we breathe out, we do it through our mouth. And it's through the abdomen and not the chest. So we ask the client to press the hand on the abdomen and ensure when they are taking a breath in, it's the abdomen is rising and not the chest. So that is the breathing technique. The other techniques which are found to be more effective, but not many can remember it. So it's called the 4-7-8 technique, where 4 seconds is inhalation, 7 seconds is hold, and 8 seconds is exhalation. What I'll do is towards the end of the presentation today, I think I have made a small compilation of the stress management techniques which are evidence based. I have written a small book actually. It's in the not in the final stages of formatting yet, but it's available. I shared the link. Maybe you can go through it if you feel it might be helpful. So that is the second D, where is the deep breathing. The third D is distraction, when you actually engage something which is not related to the topic. It can be listening to music. It can be for people who are very angry and upset. We ask the males to do push-ups, and for the females to take a jog, immediate jogging at that point of time. And the last D is drink a lot of water till your pet is like completely full. So once you do that, the anger comes down. In the distraction, we also say a back counting technique where you can ask the client to count from 20 to 0. And if they're very angry, they can count from 100 to 0 in a back way. And once by the time they reach 0, usually the anger is 0. So these are the various techniques for anger management. That is something you can try. In the DBT session that I'll talking about, I'll also talk about a few more skills, which are distress tolerance skills and emotion regulation strategies. That is also something that you can use. Okay?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. So I'll continue with my presentation from here. Okay. So yes, so the next topic that I plan to talk about is DBT. So the way I said, DBT is one of the forms of DBT is dialectical behavior therapy. It is based on the principle of mindfulness-based interventions. So what does DBT say and where it specifically works? Because the ways sir mentioned about cases that come to us. Like when they come to us, they're like very, like intertwined and complicated. There will be the husband will be shouting at the client, and then this particular female will be like very angry and upset, and like accusing the husband of everything, accusing the in-laws of everything, and there might be actually a very chaotic family that is there. So it's very important for us to be able to identify that there are things that like what is how we can help and what is there that we can change. So I use this quote which is said, like, oh God, give me the strength to change what I can, the courage to accept what I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay. So this is what exactly is dialectical that it means. There has to be a delicate balance between acceptance and change. Like the situation that you said, for example, this particular client has been having a lot of anger issues. I'll give this example because I think you relate to it better and others can also relate to it with that because they shared a real patient. So this particular client might actually be having a dysfunctional family or might actually be having a husband that she does not like, for whatever reasons, maybe for whatever reasons. So obviously, right now we're not thinking of a situation where she can change the husband, right? So maybe she has to accept that this person is going to be like this. So she has to accept that this person is like this. For example, this person has a job and that person has to go to work from this time to this time. So he will not be available for me from this time to this time. And maybe in the evenings also, for example, if he's a doctor or something like that, so in the evenings also he has to attend calls and stuff like that. So I cannot get upset, like the moment he comes, he's taking phones. I cannot be upset about it. That I have to accept it's a part of his job, right? So I have to accept that this particular person, who is my husband, has these attributes. Some of it I like, some of it I do not like. For example, the husband watches a very common reason with all of the females. Like they do not like their husband spending time sticking to the TVs, watching cricket all day, right? But for example, your husband likes doing that. So what you have to accept is your husband likes cricket. We don't have to accept that he will continue watching cricket all day and all night. So there is possibility that there might be some change which is possible. So how to achieve the change is something that you have to think about. So for example, about the cricket thing, how we proceed with it is accepting that the husband loves cricket, but maybe what you don't like is every day in between the this ICC cricket match, T20 and all that, happening almost every day, series after series, series after series, and maybe the wife is fed up with that. So what you can set a goal is maybe you can watch the last three, like the quarterfinals, finals, or maybe you can watch the matches where India plays or where a favorite cricket player plays. Like I won't say anything about it, but the other days you have to do this. Like you have to help me with this and that. So maybe the, the fact that the husband likes cricket is something that you cannot change. But what can be changed is what kind of matches he watches can be something that can be mutually agreed upon, and that is something that is available to change, right? So now, when we talk about a change, also, it is not a change in others; it is a change within us, right? So I cannot say that he will not watch cricket the entire time. That is something which is going to make the husband mad because that is something that he really likes doing. What else will he do if he does not watch a cricket match? What else is there? What kind of recreation do you expect him to do? So we have to also understand when we talk about change, it's the ability to change within us and not within the husband. Like for example, when you what can change here is the moment the husband starts switching on the TV, the wife starts getting angry, upset, starts with tantrums, like it's not good food, walks out of the house, starts shouting, howling, screaming. So maybe what you can do here is you can change that behavior of yours instead of acting that way. You ask the husband, like I want to talk about something. Let me know when you're free. Then you have this conversation where you say, "Okay, see, this is how it is affecting my mental health. I understand you like cricket, but would you be willing to maybe select a few matches that you really want to watch and maybe some other times that are left behind, I would like to spend with you, or I want you to help with the kids' homework, or maybe I want you to help and get the grocery and stuff like that because like it's getting a lot for me." So communicating about what changes do you want is something that is under your control, right? So you can do that. But if the husband will agree to it, comply to it or not, is not something that is under your control. Right? So what is under your control is not getting angry and upset, asking for a time to talk, sitting and having a conversation about it, setting clear goals about what and how you want the husband to contribute or behave differently, and then if the husband agrees or does not agree, think about the next steps accordingly, right? And that is what mindfulness is all about. It is more about the present moment awareness. I'll talk about a few more skills later. So mindfulness is, see, I notice that when my husband is starting to watch the TV, I notice I'm getting angry. That is the first mindfulness skill that he used, right? So what I'm doing when I'm getting angry is I'm just going and shouting at my husband. So I'm acting this way, right? So that is again that you become aware of, which is again a skill of mindfulness. So what do I want to do about it? I want to regulate my own emotions. I want to tolerate the distress that comes to me when I see my husband doing this. Okay, and how I tell him or how I communicate it to him is interpersonal effectiveness for healthy relationships and boundary setting. Okay, so the DBT skills can actually be used in detective practice for across the spectrum of diagnosis, although initially it is reserved for DBT for personality disorders like borderline personality. Okay. So the first skill that I want to talk to you about is the stop skill. I talk about a 4D technique, which is primarily for anger management, which you can use definitely. But this is a skill which can be used across the spectrum of intense emotions, not necessarily anger. Right? This is a stop skill. So uh, this is particularly when there is a very overwhelming crisis and you're about to do something which is very harsh. Like for example, you just want to go and hit your husband. This particular female that we're talking about. So what is stop? So S with the stop stands for stop. T stands for take a step back, right? Observe. O is observe, okay. And P is proceed mindfully. So S stop is whatever you are doing or you are about to do. Okay, just do not react. I'll give you one more example. Suppose we are going to work every day and there is a boss who is like very like always shouting, howling and all that. The moment you see and today you decide कि आज तो उसको कुछ बोल के ही रहूंगी kind of. So whatever you are doing or whatever you're about to do, do not react. Like we say literally freeze for 3 seconds. One, two, three. Okay? Freeze yourself. Do not, your emotions may be trying to make you act without thinking. To stay in control. That is the reason why we ask you to just stop. The second step is T, which is like take a step back. So take a step back in the situation, if not physically, at least mentally, and take deep breaths. The way I said deep breathing techniques, you can do that. The third step is observe. Observe what you are reacting to, what thoughts are going in your mind, and what sensations you notice in your body. Just be observant about it. And also observe what people around you are doing. Right? So, like for example, the situation that I said about the TV, right? Uh, what you're reacting to? The question is, I'm reacting to him watching TV at the moment he walks in home, right? What are the thoughts that are going to be mind? He came back again. He's not contributing in the house. At least he could have said a hi. At least he could have said that he's going to watch a TV. But no communication, no interaction. I don't think he cares for me. I think he feels I'm a worthless and is just taking me for granted, right? And then what sensations you're noticing in your body at that point of time? You feel that perhaps you're shaky, your face is flushing, and then you're experiencing a lot of heartbeat. Just be observant about it, and then proceed mindfully. Like it's like taking a helicopter view of the entire picture. Like the helicopter view can be see yourself as a third person, right? So there is this husband and wife. Okay? I can see that the wife is getting angry because the husband keeps on watching the TV all the time, and then in the anger, she's trying to do something. So in that situation, as a friend, what would you tell the wife? Okay? That is the question that you should be asking mindfully. And then what is the most effective way to deal with it? I give you the answer, the way effective to go with. So as a friend, think about the possible answers, right? That is what the stop skill is. And whatever as a third person you feel like advising your friend, do it accordingly. That is what the stop skill talks about. Okay? That is usually for situations of extreme crisis when you're not able to understand what to do and you think of doing something really bad right now. I'm just going to shout and holler. Or say, chaku leke jaake, like do something. Take a broom and I'm going to hit my husband, something like that. Before you do that, just try doing this, right? This is another skill, which is again the tip skill. It is again for very intense emotions. The first step that I said is if at all you are able to take a step back and do all of it, try the stop technique. But sometimes it is even worse. Like, despite doing that, you're not able to control, you're not able to think, or not able to proceed mindfully. At that point of time, these are the other techniques that you can do to regulate your emotions even better. The first technique is regulate the temperature. T stands for temperature. So, how do you do that and how does it work? So, whenever we put ice on our face, how do we feel? Calm, right? This is exactly how it works. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which calms down your sympathetic nervous system or comes down your cortisol, and that is how you start feeling good. Okay. So what you can do is you can, if you're feeling like extreme and you want to do something, just wash your face with ice cold water. If you're not able to do that, at least hold ice in your hands. Like that will also give you feedback. The second step is to intense exercise. The way I said, it's like guys can do push-ups, females can just do a jogging. It can be gender neutral also. You can try both. If you have a big lawn around or if there's a space, or you can actually go and take a run, please do that. Try doing that more often. The P is spaced breathing. The techniques that I told about, the four box technique or the 6, 7, 8 technique. Try doing it at a particular pace, regulate it. And the last is paired muscle relaxation. There is a exercise that is available freely on YouTube. It's available. It's called the JPMR, which is Jacobson Progressive Muscle Relaxation. You can ask your clients to do that particular video to help you calm down as well. That is the second tip that you can give. And because it is a mnemonic, so it's easy for remembering, particularly in situations where there is already a crisis happening. Okay. And then the last skill that I'll be talking to you about is an interpersonal effectiveness skill. It's very, very important, particularly when you're angry and upset and you actually have to deal with people that obviously you have a lot of shikwa, gila, and all of that, right? So the technique that we use is something called the half smile and wheeling hands technique. Okay. So what does it mean? Like how your demeanor should be when you're talking. Obviously, you're feeling a lot angry inside. You're feeling numb. You do not want to talk. You feel upset. You feel betrayed. You feel humiliated. You feel taken for granted. So in that situation, having a normal face is very difficult. That is why we want you to have something called a half smile. I would request all of you to actually try doing a half smile right now. Okay. How do you feel? You feel relaxed, right? Suddenly start feeling calmer. And you don't know why you're smiling, right? But still, it feels good, right? This is exactly what you have to do when you're feeling stressed. There is a stressful situation, and I talked about no? There has to be a balance between acceptance and change. So maybe to help you accept what you cannot change, you can just try this half smile. It will reduce your inner tension by at least 50%, or even more. If you keep holding on to it for longer, it will actually help you feel better. Okay? That is the first technique that you teach your clients to try a half smile when they are stressed. And the
It's
second,
ma'am, it's very small, but it's a very helpful, ma'am. Really, it's very
yeah,
much helpful. Yes, yes.
try doing it. It is actually helpful. I'll give you the second technique also, which is very, very important. This hand, the position of the hands and the way it is positioned. Just all of you are sitting on your chairs, right? Just try doing it right now. Put a half smile on your face and put your hands like this. Okay? Take 3 breaths. Now, in this situation, with your half smile intact and your hands like this, I want you to think about the situation about which you were very angry maybe a week back, or in the last 1 month, or in the last 1 year. The situation that made you extremely angry. Keep your half smile intact, keep your hands like this, and think about the situation. And can you reflect on what you're feeling about the situation? Think about the situation that made you angry.
It
Are you sorry? Are you able to be angry?
no, ma'am.
Not possible, right? So this is again a gifted skill that you can give to your clients. Okay, who tend to get angry and upset and tense very intermittently. Just try to teach them the skill of a half smile and willing hands. This is exactly how it looks like. Ask them to do like this. Do not have your eyes closed. You can have your eyes open. You do not have to sit with the legs crossed. You can sit with the legs down as well. But the position of the hands has to be like this. It can be put on table as well. Okay, and try to think about the situation that is making you angry. Then you will be able to execute whatever you want to do, and your mind will be clear to take decisions rationally. Okay, right. So these are the few skills that I thought will be important about DBT, and I think I'll. This is the last example that I have for you today. Jasmine is 24-year-old female, and she has come with a history of self-harm and unstable relationships. Like she had many relationships. Each relationship lasts for 3 to 4 months. Then she goes into a breakup. Then she, like she does self-harm. She uses substance. Uh, she experiences intense emotions that shifts rapidly. She says, "I don't know what's triggering me. I don't know what happens, but I wake up in the morning. I was okay, but then 10 minutes down the line, I start feeling numb, and then I don't know what to do. I just feel very angry and upset, and I just want to run away from the place and stuff like that." Okay? And when distressed, she engages in substance. Sometimes she's like she orders a lot to eat. She's like binge eating and then self-injury. And then recent crisis is like she cut herself after an argument with a partner who did not turn up for dinner. Okay, and this client has come to you and the target. So how would I proceed with this client? Is first I identify the target behaviors, right? For example, the first and the most prominent thing that I'm seeing is self-harm, which could be life-threatening, right? The second is she has been canceling sessions because she has a partner who canceled dinner, so she just might cancel sessions. So possibly she might do that with us as well. And then the quality of life when she has so many ongoing unstable relationships and she has substance use and erratic pattern of managing her emotions, definitely her quality of life is going to be affected. And then the skill deficit that we can very clearly see is that she is experiencing intense emotions, right? We need to teach her skills of emotion regulation. Okay. So what is the pattern of dysregulation when it can identify? There is a trigger, like for example, this partner cancelled dinner, and then she perceives rejection. Perhaps I'm not loved. Perhaps he's going to go with someone else. Perhaps he'll leave me. Perhaps he'll leave me abandoned and stuff like that. And then what emotion happens is like intense fear and anger, right? And then what action she does? I don't know how to handle it. I just cut my hand and I feel good. All of it calms down. I feel better for a moment. That is why she continues to do self harm. That is her explanation of it, right? So what we do and how we proceed with this client is first is establish a treatment structure. The way I said, it has to be a very predictable sessions, weekly therapy, and then some people say because the skills that I talked to you about, like the stop tips, and then the half smile and willing hands technique, like these skills can be taught in groups as well. It does not need to be like very one-on-one kind of session for that. There can be phone coaching as well. Like there is a crisis like this, I feel like doing it. DBT is the only form of therapy where people tend to have phone coaching as well. Other forms of therapy, we limit interactions to just uh, session appointments and stuff like that. And then you agree on a treatment plan, whatever works for both of you. Then we talk about mindfulness skills, and I think I have not talked about all of the DBT techniques because it's going to take a lot of time. But I talked about the techniques which are very easy to implement, and each one of you can actually take home and do it with your clients that you're seeing, right? So the other techniques like the wise mind, I'll just talk to you about briefly. It's like I talked to you about in the first session also. There are three minds in our brain. Right? The first is the emotional mind, the second is the logical mind, and the balance between the two is the wise mind. Okay? So when we teach mindfulness, we train our clients to just think about which mind was working when you're taking this decision. Okay? And then observe emotions without judgment. The ability to practice mindfulness. This third is distress tolerance skills. I talked about the tip techniques, tips skills. You can also use stop here. And when the client is wanting to actually do a self harm, to ask them to apply tips. That is the exact point when they apply tips, and that might actually help them calm their intense emotions, and they might not resort to self harm. And then we also talk about a concept called radical acceptance. What does radical acceptance mean? It's like it does not say ki, I'll tell you, Rajna. Radical acceptance means what is. Okay? For example, I gave this example in the last time also. Like, so for example, every day morning, the school starts at 7 o'clock, for that I have to wake up at 6. Radical acceptance is this is something which will happen, I cannot change it. Right? Radical acceptance is accepting what is the way it is. Okay? At the same time, it does not mean give up. It says something else. It says this is what I cannot change, but what I can change about it is the way I perceive it. Maybe I can go to bed early, maybe I can come back, drop off my kid and come back to office and then I go to sleep. So something like that. So I have to accept what is before I can change something that will actually help me. Otherwise, if I keep fighting and struggling, saying that do I have to wake up every day at 6? Why do I have to wake up every day at 6? And you keep struggling about something that you cannot change, I think you're just stuck and you're dealing with the distressing emotions forever. So that is about radical acceptance. That is a skill that we have to teach clients. There are many ways to do it. And DBT is like a 6 month training session and a 6 months hands-on hand-holding sessions. And that is when you actually become a trained DBT therapist. So I have just given you some snippets that you can actually use, but actually talking about the DBT therapy completely, well, it's like a 3-day workshop. So I will not be able to do all of it. Yes. And then the step 4 is emotion regulation skills, where we talk about identifying and labeling emotions. What you can use here is an emotional vocabulary card where it helps people understand emotions and sometimes identify physical sensations and then relate it to emotions, because sometimes it's very overwhelming when you're experiencing a lot of thoughts and feelings simultaneously. You can be angry, upset, fearful, frustrated, super like the sadistic mode, and all can happen at the same time. So it's very, very important to help the client understand, like the okay, so that's an intense emotion. We say these kind of situation states of intense emotion. But when you were happy, you were this. When you were anxious, this is why you're anxious. Do you feel anxious right now? Like yes. So why do you say you're anxious? When you can help them identify a physical sensation or a mental thought that they identify with anxiety and help them segregate the different emotions so that they can work on one at a time before it becomes intense. Okay. Please is usually like physical exercise. Physical exercise. L is actually taking care of your own self. Physical, mein the L is physical. P and L. Okay. E is exercise. A is like accept, nurturing care. Provide affirmations so that you affirmations. All of you must have heard about positive affirmations. It's that. And SE is self-efficacy, where you believe I can take charge of my health, I can take charge of my mental health, and my mental health is my responsibility. So that kind of a self-efficacy skill, so that will help them reduce vulnerability so that they're not engaging in relationships that are harmful to them. Right? And then there are these two skills of dear man and give skills. I'll not talk about it in detail, but the example that I gave you about the person sitting on the couch and the wife example, the techniques that I followed while conversation are all dear man approaches. You can Google about dear man for assertiveness, it will give you a principle. Give skills also, you can Google it, you will find a picture. And finally, how we target it is we first targeted the self-harm. Remember? So we identify triggers, we provide links, we provide them coping strategies, and build a safety plan. Safety plan means what they do in crisis. We provide them with a plan, get it written, printed, and provide it to them so that they have it in a place where it is more handy. Because at times of intense emotions, it's not possible practically to remember what you're supposed to do at that point of time, right? Okay, so this is the last slide of the day because I think at 11:20 I'll need to close. We have a session thereafter. So psychodynamic therapy, maybe for personality, relationships, and self-understanding, it can be reserved for that particular group. CBT is the best for anxiety, depression, and for specific symptoms. And DBT is more for emotion regulation, self-harm, borderline personality disorders. So I would like to say that once we talk about the different therapy approaches, select the therapy based on your client needs, the presenting complaints and therapeutic goals. But the most important thing is whatever I talk to you today is just an overview. Like this is not a training in any of the forms of therapy that I talk to you about. Each of the therapy that is mentioned here, like CBT also has CBT for anxiety, CBT for depression, CBT for OCD, CBT for psychosis, and there are many variations to each and every form of therapy that I talked about. Psychodynamic therapy also has like at least five therapies that are like different schools of psychotherapy within the psychodynamic psychotherapy as well. DBT, I told you how intensive it is, right? So whatever I talk to you about today, here, right now, is just an overview. If you're interested in actually doing any of the forms of therapy, please get a proper training course before you actually go into the proper CBT, DBT, and psychodynamic therapy. Because there are a lot of courses that are available with supervision, and I think that will ensure that your expertise is much better and you deliver your clients the best that is possible. Obviously, right now, if you already have clients that you're seeing, you can use some techniques here and there. But I would strongly recommend if you are willing for continuing your career in counseling and you want to advance the next level, consider having a proper training, right? So that would be my last slide. I'm happy to take questions. We still have around 8, 9 minutes, and then maybe we can close the session. Yeah, I think Rakesh Naik has raised a hand. Yes, please go on. Or was it by mistake? If Mr. Rakesh, if you are speaking, we're not able to hear you. Okay, I think that was by mistake. Okay, any other questions?
Madam, it's not question. Actually, um, you are working in which hospital or where, ma'am?
I work at Kalinga Institute of Medical Sciences, KIMS.
Kings. Okay. So,
I,
if
I'll share a book that has compiled a set of distressing techniques. Maybe I'll do that. Okay, please continue with your question.
okay, ma'am. So you are working in Kings, no? So, okay. So, who is OPD or ED where?
Okay, so I'll tell you about myself. Maybe I did not say a lot about me. So I am basically a psychiatrist. So I see patients. Psychiatrist means like I have done my MBBS, which is like being a doctor, and then I did my specialization in psychiatry. Then I have a lot of training courses in advanced psychotherapy measures. I did it over a period of 2 to 3 years, and then I did my fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry at the St. John's Medical College, Bangalore. Right. And after that, I have been working as a faculty at Kalinga Institute of Medical Sciences, Bhubaneswar. So I work in the OPD settings. I have inpatient clients. I also take therapy sessions. So yes, so I have weekly OPD days as Wednesdays and Saturdays. On Fridays and Tuesdays, I have my grand ward round. Mondays and Thursdays, I've reserved it for research work and for therapy clients.
So, actually, ma'am, why am I asking? Because Actually, I'm working as an adolescent and youth counselor in Your Confidant. We have one organization. So sometimes we are calling few guests for giving us training or teaching, like you are telling, no? So CBT, DBT, there are different kinds of therapy that are coming. So I wanted to, it's online session, ma'am. I wanted to take one session from you. So if
Yeah, yeah,
mail
sure.
ID or some,
My
yes,
mail ID I'll leave in the chat box, and maybe I'll leave my phone number as well if you want to connect. We can
yes, 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 please.
sure. Okay then. So, anything else? Otherwise, we'll close the session for the day. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye. So I was sharing that Pothi thing. No, I'll just share it. There was a QR code. Yeah, I think I'll share this material with you so that all of you can use it later as well.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes. So this is a book that maybe all of you can go, and there are a lot of techniques like this. You can also ask your clients to go through it. That can be a good measure. So it's called the Stress Free Mind, and it's available on pothi.com. Right?
Okay, okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Right. If there's anything else, otherwise I'll just leave. Thank you so much for your time. All the best for your future. So those interested can scan the QR code. It will directly take you to the link. Okay. Bye bye.